Hi guys. It's good to have you here tonight. Before we begin, I want to ask you something simple. Where are you listening from? And what time is it where you are? I always find it fascinating how somewhere out there, it might be morning, and yet, here in our story, it is night. A very long night. A night in the land of the Vikings. The sea outside is dark and heavy, pressing against the wooden shore with a slow, tired rhythm. The air smells of salt, smoke, and frozen pine. And far inland, where mountains rise like sleeping giants, snow has already fallen, quiet and patient, covering everything in silence. In one of the small villages along the fjord lives a man named Eirik. The others call him Eirik the Quiet, not because he never spoke, but because he preferred to listen, to the crackle of fire, to the wind slipping through cracks in the roof, to the low hum of the world when everyone else had gone to sleep. It is winter now, and that means no raids, no sailing, no roaring of oars through the waves. The long ships rest upside down on the frozen beach, their dragon heads hidden under snow. The axes have been hung up, the shields stacked against the wall. And yet, for men like Eirik, life does not stop when the battles end. It simply changes shape. Inside the Longhouse, the fire glows like a heartbeat. The walls are lined with wooden carvings, serpents, wolves, spirals that twist like thought itself. People sit around the hearth, shoulders wrapped in furs. Some mend nets, some sharpen blades, some just stare into the flames as if the future could be read there. Eirik sits a little apart, his back against a post. He runs his thumb along the handle of a small knife, one he forged himself many summers ago. It's not for war, this knife. It's for work, carving, shaping, creating. Because when the nights grow long and the sea freezes, the Vikings become something else. They become storytellers, craftsmen, dreamers. But maybe that surprises you. When we think of Vikings, we imagine fire and blood and storms at sea. But most of their lives were not spent raiding or fighting. Most of their lives were spent waiting, through winters like this, when there was nothing to conquer but time. Eirik's wife, Astrid, hums quietly while she weaves near the fire. Their little boy, Canute, is already half asleep, his hair tangled, his hand clutching a small wooden horse. The glow of the hearth makes his face soft and golden. Outside, the wind howls against the roof, a lonely, hollow sound. Inside, it's warm, calm. And yet, there's something in the air, something heavy and ancient, like the whole world is holding its breath. Eirik often wonders what his ancestors did on nights like this, before the longhouses, before the farms. Did they also sit in circles around the fire, trading stories and staring into the dark? Or did they walk out into the cold, looking up at the stars and thinking of gods and monsters that might still wander beyond the light? He remembers what the village skald, an old storyteller named Renewal, once said. A Viking's night is never empty. When the fire burns low, the mind begins to travel where the body cannot. Eirik smiles at that. Because tonight, his mind feels restless. There's no battle to fight, no ship to sail. But inside him there's a kind of quiet storm. Thoughts, memories, things unsaid. He stands up, wraps a thick cloak over his shoulders, and steps outside. The air hits him like a blade, sharp, cold, but clean. Above, the sky glows faintly green with the shimmer of northern lights. The fjord is frozen over, black ice reflecting the colors of the sky. Somewhere far away, a dog barks once, then goes silent again. He walks toward the edge of the hill, where the land drops into darkness. Down below, he can see other longhouses, small flickers of orange light glowing like distant stars. Each one holds a family, a fire, and a story. He can almost hear them, laughter, soft talk, the sound of someone plucking a stringed instrument, the low thump of a drum. And in that moment, Eirik feels something rare, peace. The world is asleep, but it's not dead. It's dreaming. And he's part of that dream. He thinks about the men who left months ago for raids and never returned. About the sea that swallowed them, and the wives who still look toward the horizon every morning, just in case. He wonders if, somewhere, their spirits drift under the same cold sky. The Vikings believed that even the dead listened to the wind, that whispers carried through the air, between the worlds of the living and the lost. Eirik listens now. He doesn't hear words, only the deep hum of the wind as it brushes past the mountains. But it feels like a language older than his own, a voice from a time when God still walked among men. He stays there for a long time, letting the cold bite at his fingers until they ache, until the firelight from the Longhouse seems impossibly far away. And then when he finally turns back, he feels lighter, as if the night itself has taken something from him, a weight he didn't know he carried. When he returns, Astrid is asleep, Canute too. The fire has burned low, just red coals and a few blue flickers of flame. Eirik sits beside it and stirs the embers gently. Sparks rise like tiny stars, and he watches them fade one by one. Soon, he'll lie down beside his family, close his eyes, and listen to the slow breathing of the night. But for now, he just sits. Thinking. Remembering. Because for the Vikings, night was not only the time for sleep. It was the time when the world grew quiet enough to listen to itself. The fire in the Longhouse never truly sleeps. Even when the flames curl low and the smoke drifts lazily toward the roof, it holds a quiet warmth, a steady heartbeat that keeps the night from feeling empty. Eirik sits closer now, back pressed to the rough wooden wall, listening to the soft crackle of the embers. Each pop and hiss carries a tiny story of its own, a language only those who live by fire seem to understand. The night outside may be cold, even unforgiving, but here within these walls, life feels slow, deliberate, and strangely comforting. Around him, the Longhouse hums softly. Other villagers are still awake, moving in muted rhythms that echo against the timber and thatch. A few men lean over rough tables, carving wooden spoons or repairing fishing hooks. Their hands move methodically, not a word spoken, as if the concentration itself is a kind of song. The metal of a knife being sharpened scratches against a whetstone with a quiet insistence, steady and persistent, like the turning of time itself. Eirik watches, fascinated, as the simple repetitive motions fill the room with invisible threads of purpose. In these quiet nights, work is no longer a chore, it is a meditation, a way to keep one's hands busy while the mind roams free. Astrid hums softly as she mends a torn piece of cloth, the rhythmic pull of thread in and out of the fabric forming its own gentle music. Occasionally, she glances at Eirik, offering a small, knowing smile, a silent acknowledgement that the night is theirs, both ordinary and extraordinary. Canute, curled beneath a thick wool blanket, mumbles in his sleep, the small sounds of childhood dreams adding another layer to the quiet symphony of the house. The smell of roasting meat, though now faint, still lingers in the air, a reminder of the evening meal shared hours ago, and it mingles with the earthy scent of fir, pine, and smoke. It is a comfort as ancient as the walls themselves, a warmth that even the coldest wind cannot penetrate. Eirik's eyes wander across the room, taking in details that might otherwise be overlooked during the busyness of day. The carvings etched into the walls are fascinating, serpents twisting endlessly, patterns that seem to move if you stare long enough. Each line tells a story, though the meaning is often lost to time. Yet in their simplicity and repetition, they carry a certain power, a reminder of continuity, of generations who sat by this very hearth and carved their fears, their hopes, and their memories into the same wood. The Longhouse is more than a shelter. It is a living chronicle of a people who understand the subtle beauty of routine, the sacred rhythm of work, and the quiet majesty of ordinary life. A few villagers gather in a small corner to share whispers of old tales, their voices low, almost conspiratorial. They speak of things that happened long ago, of raids that shook distant lands, of monsters glimpsed in the fog, of strange lights that danced on the fjord when the moon was full. Though these stories are rarely meant to frighten, the undercurrent of awe and mystery gives the night a shape, a heartbeat of its own. Eirik listens with rapt attention, not for fear, but for the way these stories remind him of the vastness of the world, of things beyond his longhouse, beyond his village, and beyond the frozen fjord. In the quiet hours, these tales have weight. They linger in the mind like smoke, twisting and curling, carrying memories of lives lived and dreams imagined. Sometimes, Eirik rises to refill the fire, watching sparks leap into the darkness, only to vanish almost instantly. There is a subtle satisfaction in tending the flames, in coaxing life from coals that are close to dying. He thinks of the fire as a companion, a silent friend that shares the long night without asking for anything in return. Each flicker and glow seems to pulse with a quiet promise, that no matter how long the night stretches, there is warmth to be found, there is comfort to be made, and there is a world to explore even when the sea is still and the ships rest at the shore. Outside, the wind moans softly against the walls, but inside, the hum of life continues. There is no rush here, no urgent call to action. Time flows differently within the Longhouse. The hands that once swung axes now carve wood with care. The voices that once shouted commands at sea now speak in hushed tones to the next generation. Eirik observes this transformation with a quiet fascination. It is as though the night itself reshapes the villagers, revealing layers of life that are invisible during the blaze of day. Here, the Vikings are not warriors or raiders. They are storytellers, craftsmen, parents, dreamers, humans who find meaning not only in conquest but in the quiet, persistent acts that sustain life. And yet, even in this calm, there is an undercurrent of restlessness. Eirik can feel it stirring in the minds of the villagers around him, a soft, almost imperceptible tension, like the first tremor of waves against a distant shore. The quiet night is deceptive, he thinks. It gives them peace, yes, but it also awakens something deeper: curiosity, memory, longing. Thoughts drift toward journeys not taken, friendships tested, and adventures that may never come. And that is the paradox of these long, still nights. They are both comforting and unsettling, grounding and liberating, simple and infinitely complex. Eirik leans back, letting his gaze sweep over the room once more. The firelight dances across faces, catching eyes, illuminating the fine lines etched by age, worry, and laughter. He notices the subtle shift in expression as someone remembers a distant relative, a vanished friend, a forgotten moment of joy. These small, silent reactions are the threads that weave the night together. Each movement, each glance, each whispered word is a part of a tapestry that stretches far beyond the walls of the Longhouse, connecting the living to their ancestors, to the earth, and to the rhythm of the world itself. As the fire settles into a gentle glow, the Longhouse seems to breathe in unison. Shadows stretch lazily along the wooden beams, curling and twisting like ancient spirits watching from the corners. Eirik leans back, his fingers brushing lightly over the carved runes of his knife handle. In these hours, there is space for thought, for stories, for songs that float through the smoke and mingle with the warmth. Tonight, as on many nights before, the villagers gather to listen to the skald, the storyteller who carries the voices of gods and men alike. The skald is an older man named Renewal, his hair like silver threads falling past his shoulders, and his eyes deep and knowing, reflecting the firelight with a kind of patient wisdom. He has seen winters come and go, has watched friends leave and never return, and has carried in his memory a library of tales that seem older than the mountains themselves. When he begins to speak, his voice is soft but deliberate, rising and falling with a rhythm that holds attention even when the body is tired, when the mind is heavy with the quiet of night. Eirik watches as others settle closer to the hearth, drawing furs tighter around their shoulders, tilting their heads, and letting their thoughts drift into the stories. The first tale tonight is of Thor's journey to the land of giants, a story of cunning, strength, and the cleverness that often outweighs brute force. Runi's voice paints vivid images: the towering mountains, the icy rivers, the giants with hands like boulders, and Thor's hammer swinging with impossible power. But it is not just the spectacle that captivates. It is the quiet wisdom woven through the story, the subtle reminders of courage, loyalty, and the importance of clever thought even when the world seems perilous. Eirik's mind drifts with the story. He can see the flames reflected in Thor's eyes as he steps carefully across a frozen river, each footfall measured and precise. He imagines the shadows of the giants stretching across the snow, and he feels a chill that is both physical and deep in his chest, a shiver of awe and reverence. These stories are more than entertainment. They are guides, teachers, and companions in the long nights when no raids call the men to the sea. They connect the living to the past, and the present to the infinite possibilities that lie beyond the horizon. Occasionally, Runi pauses, letting a silence linger. It is not emptiness. It is a space where imagination takes root, where listeners fill in the gaps with their own thoughts and dreams. Eirik notices young children pressing close to their parents, their eyes wide, faces aglow with firelight and wonder. Even the adults, hardened by seasons of work and the occasional call to battle, seem to soften in these moments, allowing themselves to be carried away by the rhythm of words and the subtle music of language. The stories are not limited to gods and monsters. There are tales of men and women, of lives intertwined with luck, skill, and fate. A woman who tamed a wild horse and rode it across distant hills. A fisherman who survived a storm by trusting a strange bird that guided him to shore. A village that endured famine, yet found ways to share bread and hope. These narratives are quieter, less dramatic than battles and raids, but they hold their own power, a reminder that heroism exists in patience, in craft, in small acts that sustain life when the world feels unrelenting. Outside, the wind sighs against the walls, but inside, the warmth of the hearth and the cadence of Runi's voice create a bubble of safety, intimacy, and reflection. Eirik can hear the occasional crack of burning wood, a tiny punctuation that underscores the rhythm of the storytelling. He notices the subtle expressions on the villagers' faces, smiles that appear and fade, eyes narrowing in focus, hands clasping one another unconsciously. The stories are a mirror, reflecting their own lives, fears, and desires, even as they transport them to worlds beyond the fjord. And yet, there is a subtle magic here that is difficult to define. It is not the story alone, nor the fire, nor even the company of others. It is the combination: the night, the warmth, the flickering shadows, the deliberate pace, and the mind's willingness to wander. In these hours, imagination is given permission to roam freely, to breathe, to exist fully without interruption. The world beyond the Longhouse becomes distant, and for a while, the ordinary rules of life dissolve. What remains is a tapestry of thought, feeling, and memory, intricately woven with words and silence alike. Eirik thinks about the rhythms of these nights, how they differ from the chaos of day, from the clamor of the market or the roar of the sea. Here, a song or a story is not merely recited. It is inhabited, lived, and felt. Every listener contributes to it, filling spaces with their own perception and understanding. And when the tale concludes, when Runi leans back and exhales, there is a pause, a moment of collective breathing, a recognition that something ancient has been shared. It is as if the fire itself has absorbed the story, glowing a little brighter, holding the wisdom and wonder of the words for those who are awake to witness it. Eirik remains by the fire long after the other villagers have drifted towards sleep. He lets the echoes of Runi's stories sink into him, mixing with memories of his own adventures, the faces of friends who have long departed, and the distant shimmering images of gods walking through time. Outside, the night continues, deep and patient, carrying the weight of snow, wind, and stars. But inside, the Longhouse hums with life, thought, and imagination, a sanctuary where the quiet moments of existence are magnified, celebrated, and remembered. And in that gentle, immersive rhythm, Eirik understands something that cannot be spoken directly: that nights like this, filled with stories, firelight, and shared wonder, are not merely pauses between action. They are the essence of life itself, slow and deliberate, weaving memory, lesson, and dream into the fabric of each soul present. The Longhouse grows quieter as the night stretches, the fire now reduced to smoldering embers that pulse softly like the heartbeat of the world itself. Eirik steps outside again, drawn by the stillness that only the frozen fjord can offer. The night air is sharper than before, cutting through layers of wool and fur, yet invigorating in a way that makes every breath feel alive. He takes a slow step toward the shore, where the ice covers the water in a smooth black sheet, reflecting the faint glow of the northern lights above. There is a peculiar hush over the fjord. The wind is softer here, brushing against the snow-laden pines with a gentle sigh, and the faint lapping of the hidden current beneath the ice seems to whisper secrets to anyone willing to listen. Eirik leans on his staff, letting his gaze wander across the expanse of frozen water. This is a place that holds memory, he thinks. Every crack in the ice, every ripple long hidden beneath the surface, is a trace of what came before. The long ships that once tore across these waters, the men who laughed, shouted, or prayed, and the countless nights when the fjord was just as silent as tonight. He moves closer to the edge, careful not to disturb the fragile surface. Underfoot, the snow crunches, a soft but deliberate counterpoint to the low murmur of the world. Eirik listens. He hears the distant howl of wolves, their voices carried across the valley, blending with the occasional cry of an owl perched high in the pines. There is a rhythm here, subtle yet unbreakable, as though the land itself breathes and sighs in time with the heartbeats of the living and the dead alike. Eirik often comes here at night, alone, when the hearth has grown quiet and the Longhouse sleeps. He does not come for adventure or conquest, those belong to the day. He comes to hear the stories that the world tells itself when no one is listening. The fjord speaks in small things. The creak of ice as it shifts, the distant crash of a hidden current, the whisper of wind against the cliffs. He wonders if the sea remembers the men who left and never returned, if the waves carry fragments of their laughter or the echo of their last cries. Tonight, the fjord seems particularly alive, as though aware of his presence. He traces the outlines of distant rocks silhouetted against the faint green aurora, noticing the subtle shimmer of frost along their edges. The cold bites at his fingers, but he does not move, not yet. There is a strange, almost magnetic pull here, a feeling that he is both tiny and infinite, small as a man standing on the ice, and vast as the silent night itself. Eirik imagines the fjord as a living entity, patient and ancient, holding the village and its people in a delicate balance. It waits, always, carrying stories, memories, and secrets beneath its frozen surface. As he walks along the edge, Eirik recalls tales he has heard from the skalds and the elders, stories of spirits that wander the fjords at night, guardians of the water and ice. Some are said to be benevolent, guiding lost travelers to safety or whispering warnings of impending storms. Others are darker, shadows lurking beneath the ice, waiting for the careless or the greedy. Eirik does not fear these stories, not entirely. He respects them. There is a logic in belief that cannot be measured by reason, a rhythm in superstition that mirrors the rhythm of life itself, careful, patient, and attuned to forces beyond immediate comprehension. He pauses near a small inlet where the ice is thinner, almost transparent, revealing the dark water moving silently below. The reflection of the stars dances on the surface, merging with the green aurora above to create a vision that is both fragile and infinite. Eirik imagines the countless fish and creatures beneath, hidden from view, going about their quiet lives as he stands frozen above. There is a sense of connection here, a realization that the world is never truly still, even when it seems so. Life moves in hidden currents, subtle and steady, and the human eye can only catch glimpses. A sudden gust of wind carries a faint, almost imperceptible sound, the crack of distant ice shifting, a whispering that seems more like thought than voice. Eirik leans forward, listening intently. He feels the pulse of the night, the slow cadence of the fjord and the land, and the fragile line between reality and imagination blurs. Perhaps these sounds are merely natural, echoes of frost and water. Perhaps they are messages, remnants of those who lived long before him, woven into the very fabric of the world. He walks back toward the village slowly, taking in the quiet majesty of the night. The houses glow faintly in the distance, fires flickering against the cold, and he feels a sense of relief and belonging. Even in silence, even in isolation, the fjord reminds him that he is part of something larger, a living, breathing, persistent world that endures beyond the span of a single life. Eirik pauses once more, letting the night settle around him. The wind carries the scent of pine, the subtle tang of salt from the water, and the memory of countless winters. He inhales deeply, the cold filling his lungs, and feels the strange serenity of understanding that some of life's most profound lessons are only heard in quiet observation. In the silence of the fjord, amid the whispers of ice and wind, Eirik finds clarity, that the world does not always demand action. Sometimes, it only asks for attention. As he reaches the Longhouse again, the firelight seems warmer, the smoke curling more gently toward the roof. The villagers remain mostly asleep, unaware of the thoughts and discoveries made beyond the walls. Eirik steps inside quietly, letting the door close softly behind him. He does not speak of what he has heard, what he has felt. There is no need. Some nights are not meant for words. And as he settles near the dying embers once more, Eirik knows that the fjord will keep its secrets, patient, vast, and eternal, until another night, when curiosity and stillness once again bring him to its edge. The night stretches on, deep and endless, and Eirik returns to the Longhouse not only with memories of the fjord but with a quiet sense of purpose. There is still much to do, even in the hours when the village sleeps, when the wind carries only whispers and the stars burn faintly over the frozen mountains. The Vikings, he knows, are a people of patience and labor as much as they are of raiding and conquest. And it is in the night, when distractions fade, that the true rhythm of life emerges, the deliberate, methodical work of hands shaping the world, one careful motion at a time. Eirik sits beside the hearth again, pulling from a small satchel a piece of seasoned wood. The knife in his hand gleams faintly in the firelight, its edge sharp but worn from use. He begins to carve, each stroke slow and deliberate, removing only what is necessary. The wood curls into thin, delicate ribbons, falling to the floor like strands of memory made solid. There is a meditation in this, a quiet discipline that calls forth patience and focus. His mind wanders, yet remains tethered to the rhythm of creation, to the steady pulse of the fire and the subtle crackle of coals beneath him. Around him, the Longhouse is mostly still. A few villagers stir quietly, performing their own nocturnal tasks. Some repair fishing nets, threading fibers with careful precision, ensuring that each knot holds fast. Others sharpen tools, their movements deliberate, the soft rasp of metal against stone echoing faintly in the room. Even small children, those who have not yet surrendered to sleep, are guided into quiet tasks, carving small figures, arranging stones, or gathering kindling. The night offers them a rare gift, a space for concentration, creativity, and reflection, removed from the chaos of day. Eirik finds a sense of rhythm in his carving, a silent language spoken through the rise and fall of his knife. He shapes the wood into the form of a small figure, a horse perhaps or a bird, something familiar yet imbued with his own care and attention. The act is simple, yet profoundly satisfying. Each motion is a dialogue between mind, hand, and material. In these small tasks, there is continuity, a quiet link to generations who have worked in similar ways, shaping wood, metal, and stone long before him. He thinks about the elders, those who have spent decades mastering crafts that now seem almost sacred. Their hands, worn and calloused, carry a memory of labor that surpasses mere survival. They know how to transform raw materials into tools, art, and sustenance. In their quiet perseverance lies a wisdom often overlooked by outsiders who only remember the sword or the longship. The night, slow and undisturbed, offers the space to witness and participate in this living tradition. Eirik's mind drifts to the stories embedded in the objects he creates. Each carving carries a meaning, a reminder of a season, a family, or a tale passed down from distant ancestors. Even the smallest figures, when held in the hand, connect the maker to a lineage of thought and action, a tapestry of shared experience that stretches beyond the immediate moment. The work of hands becomes a meditation, a conversation with the past, a way to anchor oneself in the flux of time. Occasionally, he pauses, lifting his work to the firelight to examine it from all angles. Shadows flicker across the figure, tracing lines that only appear in this delicate glow. It is in these pauses that Eirik discovers the subtle beauty of imperfection, the tiny unevenness that gives character, the asymmetry that makes it alive. He reflects that perhaps life itself is much the same, not perfectly measured or symmetrical, but shaped by attention, care, and subtle adaptation. Outside, the wind has settled into a softer hum, brushing lightly against the walls of the Longhouse. Eirik can hear distant sounds, the scrape of a branch against the roof, the occasional call of a nocturnal bird, the faint murmur of the fjord under ice. These noises, though slight, punctuate the work of the night with a reminder that the world continues to move, indifferent to human concerns, yet intimately connected through perception and care. The other villagers, for the most part, have surrendered to sleep, leaving him in the quiet company of wood, knife, and firelight. There is an intimacy in this solitude, a rare freedom to shape both material and thought without interruption. In these hours, the Vikings are not warriors or raiders. They are creators, observers, dreamers, and caretakers of their own small worlds. Each movement, each deliberate stroke, carries significance, a quiet assertion that life continues, even in the absence of action or conquest. Eirik works steadily for long minutes, sometimes losing himself entirely in the motion, sometimes pausing to gaze at the fire or the patterns of frost forming on the window. He senses a kind of dialogue unfolding between himself and the night, a subtle rhythm that links labor to reflection, effort to insight, and material to imagination. The Longhouse holds the residue of countless nights like this, each one a silent testament to patience, skill, and the quiet endurance that sustains life through the harsh winters and the long stretches between raids. When finally he sets the knife aside, the small figure complete, Eirik feels a quiet satisfaction, not triumph, not pride, but the gentle contentment of creation. He places it carefully on the windowsill, where the first hints of dawn will touch it in hours yet to come. For now, it exists in the soft glow of embers and moonlight, a testament to hands guided by attention, care, and quiet reflection. And as he leans back, letting the work settle into the world, Eirik knows that this is the essence of the Viking night. Not only the waiting, not only the dreaming, but the deliberate shaping of life, thought, and matter one quiet motion at a time. The Longhouse is nearly silent now, the embers glowing faintly as though conserving their warmth for the last hours of the night. Eirik sits quietly, watching the soft rise and fall of Astrid's chest as she sleeps beside him. Canute, their small son, is curled up nearby, nestled in thick furs that trap the warmth of the fire. The scene is ordinary, yet it feels profound, a quiet testament to life beyond raiding, beyond battle, beyond the ceaseless motion of the day. Here in the night, the Vikings reveal another truth, the power of simple presence, of silent connection, of love expressed without words. Astrid shifts slightly, murmuring something half-formed in her sleep. Eirik smiles faintly, reaching out to adjust the blanket around her. His fingers brush lightly against her arm, careful not to wake her, yet eager to remind her that he is there. These gestures, small and deliberate, are a language all their own. In a society that often values strength and action, intimacy manifests quietly, in touch, in care, in the shared act of enduring winter nights together. Eirik reflects on the subtle rhythms of family life that most outsiders would overlook. The way a glance can communicate reassurance, the way a hand resting on another can speak volumes, the way the simple act of sharing warmth across the Longhouse transforms survival into comfort. Love, he realizes, is not always loud or demonstrative. It is quiet, steady, persistent, like the fire that burns low but never dies, like the fjord beneath the ice, moving unseen but essential to life. He listens to Knut's breathing, uneven but peaceful, punctuated by the occasional soft sigh or mumble. The boy dreams, Eirik suspects, of longships and dragons, of battles and distant lands. And yet, even in those imagined adventures, there is safety, because he is tethered to this house, to his parents, to the warmth of home. Eirik wonders if these quiet nights, filled with attention and care, will shape the boy more than any tale of gods or warriors ever could. The Vikings, Eirik thinks, are creatures of paradox. They are fierce at sea, relentless in battle, yet tender and deliberate in the quiet hours. It is in the home, in these moments of stillness, that they express a different kind of strength, the resilience of patience, the courage of care, the endurance of affection. Astrid shifts again, turning toward him slightly, and Eirik leans back, letting himself rest against the wall. The intimacy of shared silence is enough. Words, he knows, would be superfluous. Outside, the wind continues its distant murmur, brushing against the walls and whispering through the trees. Eirik imagines that the world itself pauses to witness these quiet exchanges, to honor the subtle bonds that hold families and communities together. Each night, these rituals of closeness, care, and attention reaffirm what is most precious: the presence of those we love, the shared heartbeat of survival, the mutual warmth against a cold and indifferent world. Eirik recalls stories of Viking couples who endured long separations, men gone for months on raids, women tending homes, farms, and families in their absence. The letters, the carved runes, the small tokens left by travelers, all acts of love extended across distance and time. And in these small gestures, he sees the same truths echoed in his own life. Love is a practice, performed not in grand declarations, but in the quiet, repeated acts that make the night bearable, that make survival beautiful. He shifts slightly, reaching out to tuck a stray lock of Knut's hair beneath the blanket, then traces his finger along the carved patterns on the wall near the hearth. The carvings seem almost alive in the flickering light, twisting and curling in ways that mirror the quiet complexity of human relationships. Family, love, care. These are threads as intricate and enduring as the runes themselves, woven into every gesture, every touch, every shared glance across the fire. Eirik leans back, letting the night envelop him. There is a comfort in silence, a reassurance in presence, a profound stillness that bridges generations. The Vikings may be remembered for storms, raids, and conquest, but in moments like this, he understands that their true legacy lies in these quiet bonds, in the endurance of affection, in the persistence of care amidst a world that is often harsh and unforgiving. And as he closes his eyes, feeling the warmth of Astrid and Knut beside him, Eirik allows himself to surrender to the night, to the slow rhythm of the Longhouse, to the invisible pulse of family that binds them together. In the quiet of these hours, love becomes more than emotion. It becomes a presence, a force as tangible and enduring as the fire, the walls, and the frozen fjord beyond. The night deepens, carrying with it the slow, steady assurance that though the world may rage beyond these walls, within them, bonds endure, quietly, steadfastly, and without need for words. The night stretches on, heavy with stillness, and the Longhouse rests under the muted glow of embers that have dwindled almost to ash. Eirik leans back against the wall, fingers tracing the faint grooves of the carvings he knows so well. Yet even in this familiar warmth, his mind drifts to thoughts that are less tangible, ideas, beliefs, and mysteries that have lived in the shadows of Viking life for centuries. The Vikings are remembered for their raids, their ships, their iron and blood. Yet what outsiders often fail to see is the richness of their inner world, the quiet rituals, the silent devotions, the hidden beliefs that shaped how they moved through life, day by day and night by night. Eirik, like many others, was raised with stories whispered at hearths, passed from parent to child, from skald to apprentice, tales of gods and spirits whose influence could be felt even if never seen directly. He recalls the old tales of elves and land spirits, invisible beings who walked the fields, forests, and waterways. They were neither entirely benevolent nor malicious, but deeply tied to the land itself. Offerings were left in secret, a bowl of milk, a small piece of bread, a carved figure placed under a tree. These gestures were not grand. They were quiet, personal acts of respect, a recognition that life was more than what one could hold, touch, or conquer. Even the simplest ritual carried weight, a bridge between the human and the unseen, a reminder that the world contained layers hidden from ordinary eyes. Eirik imagines the villagers, many asleep now, each with their own quiet practices. Perhaps a mother has left salt along the windowsill, a gesture to keep the house safe. Perhaps a young boy has whispered a small prayer to Thor before closing his eyes. Perhaps the elders, sitting by the fire long after the others have drifted off, murmur thanks or warnings into the smoke, carrying forward customs older than any memory of written word. These rituals are subtle, almost invisible, yet they hold the same power as any sword or shield, a reinforcement of order, connection, and understanding in a world that often feels unpredictable. He thinks of the gods themselves, Odin, Thor, Freya, not as distant mythic figures, but as presences woven into daily life. Odin, the wanderer, the seeker of wisdom, represented the constant search for understanding in the midst of uncertainty. Thor, protector and fighter, reminded men and women of the necessity of strength and courage. Freya, goddess of fertility and love, reflected the cycles of life, growth, and the endurance of family. These gods were not only worshipped in grand halls or on high stones. They were acknowledged in small gestures, in the quiet turn of the wheel, in the subtle bow of a head, in the respect shown to another human or to the land itself. Eirik feels the pull of this unseen world as he sits beside the embers. He imagines the whispers of spirits along the fjord, the flicker of light in a distant forest, the subtle movement of unseen beings who watch over, guide, or perhaps test those who pass through the night. There is a rhythm here, a hidden pulse, as if the world itself contains a quiet consciousness, listening and responding to acts of care, courage, and attention. Even in silence, this presence is tangible. Sometimes, in moments like this, he envisions the worlds of myth blending with reality. The shadow of a wolf among the trees could be an ordinary animal, or it could be Fenrir himself, observing from the fringes of perception. The flicker of light on the ice could be fire, or it could be a spirit guiding travelers to safety. Eirik does not need certainty. He only needs awareness, the humility to acknowledge that the world is larger, stranger, and more mysterious than he can fully comprehend. These hidden beliefs also shape the mundane. Farmers and fishermen, warriors and craftspersons, all act with reverence, caution, and thoughtfulness that outsiders might mistake for superstition. Every act of planting, carving, or tending the fire is infused with respect for unseen forces. The quiet gestures of protection, the careful attention to the placement of objects, the acknowledgement of spirits, all create a framework that supports life in a harsh, unpredictable land. Eirik leans forward, tracing a finger over the patterns on the wooden wall, imagining them alive with meaning. The carvings are not just decoration, they are prayers, memories, records of belief. Each spiral, each serpent, each symbol is a bridge between the tangible world and the unseen, a dialogue that stretches back for generations. In the quiet of the night, these traces become vivid, as though the firelight breathes life into the shapes themselves, and the walls hum with voices that are not fully human. The night deepens, and with it comes the subtle realization that the Vikings' strength was not only in the sword or the ship but in their ability to inhabit multiple worlds at once. The world of flesh and blood, of survival and labor, and the world of spirit and myth, of unseen forces and ancient customs. Eirik feels the pulse of both, intertwined, inseparable, shaping each breath, each gesture, each thought. As he sits there, quietly acknowledging the hidden world around him, he senses that these beliefs, subtle, personal, often invisible, are as vital as the work of hands, the warmth of hearth, or the presence of family. They are the scaffolding of existence, the threads that weave together life, death, survival, and memory. In the silence of the Longhouse, amid the faint flicker of embers, Eirik understands that these hidden beliefs are what make the night rich, layered, and eternal. And in that understanding, he leans back once more, letting the quiet embrace of night, myth, and memory settle around him, holding him in the delicate balance of the seen and unseen, of work and wonder, of ordinary life and extraordinary thought. Eirik rises quietly once more, leaving the warmth of the Longhouse behind, guided by the faint glow of embers that kiss the walls like distant stars. The village sleeps, wrapped in furs and blankets, oblivious to the slow turning of the night. Yet there are those who keep vigil even in these quiet hours. Men and women who understand that safety is not always in the sword or shield, but in the subtle observation, in the attentive watchfulness that protects life while the world dreams. The night is deep, velvety, and cold. The sky a vast canvas of stars that seem closer here than anywhere else. The northern lights swirl faintly above, like ribbons of color, moving with a rhythm that is almost musical. Eirik moves silently between the longhouses, footsteps muffled by snow, senses sharpened by the stillness. Every creak of wood, every whisper of wind, every rustle of the trees becomes a signal, a message, a layer of understanding. In these hours, vigilance is not hurried or frantic. It is a calm, deliberate attention that allows the night to unfold while ensuring that nothing unexpected passes unnoticed. He pauses near the edge of the village, where the shadows stretch longest, blending earth and ice into a single indistinct mass. Here, he can see the fjord faintly, black and calm beneath the stars, and he listens. The wind carries hints of distant movement, perhaps a fox hunting, perhaps the skitter of smaller animals searching for food. He smiles faintly, aware that even these creatures follow their own patterns, their own night watches. The world is alive in subtle ways, and those who know how to read it thrive, quietly observing rhythms invisible to the untrained eye. Eirik thinks about the responsibilities of night watch. It is not always a time of action, often, it is a time of patience. The eyes see more than the mind expects, the ears hear what the day would drown out, and the body adapts to the slower, more deliberate pace of night. Even when there is nothing to report, the act of presence matters. A silent statement that the village is alive, that the people are remembered, that life continues unbroken. He notices small details others might overlook. A door slightly ajar, a window catch loosened by frost, footprints in the snow that suggest a visitor long departed. Each observation is catalogued silently, committed to memory, a ledger of the night's movements. There is no rush, no panic, only awareness, the same careful attention given to crafting a tool or tending a fire. In these quiet hours, vigilance itself becomes an art, a skill honed over years, a rhythm as natural as breathing. As he moves along the perimeter, Eirik recalls tales of night watchers from the old sagas. Men who spotted approaching raiders before the dawn, women who discovered fires started by careless travelers, scouts who warned of storms long before they arrived. These are not tales of heroism as one finds in battle. They are tales of survival, of understanding, of subtle power exercised in silence. The stories remind him that strength can be invisible, patience can be decisive, and attentiveness can safeguard lives in ways that loud action never could. A faint light glimmers from the distant forest, flickering like the breath of some hidden creature. Eirik focuses, listening intently, sensing patterns in the subtle rustle of branches, the muted scrape of snow underfoot. Perhaps it is nothing, he thinks. Perhaps it is the ordinary movement of animals in their nightly search for food. Yet there is a strange beauty in uncertainty, a quiet thrill in knowing that the night is alive, that the unseen world continues to move and shift, holding secrets that only careful attention can uncover. The night watch is as much about reflection as it is about vigilance. Eirik allows his mind to drift along the paths of memory and thought, recalling the fjord, the fire, the family, the hidden beliefs. There is a continuity in these reflections, a thread connecting all moments of quiet attention. He sees the village as a living organism, each person a part of its heartbeat, each night a stitch in the tapestry of survival and endurance. Hours pass, measured in the soft sound of his own breathing, the distant murmur of the wind, and the subtle shifts of snow and ice. Eirik moves back toward the Longhouse, careful to retrace his steps, aware that the night has offered both vigilance and insight. The village sleeps still, oblivious to the quiet protection, the silent observation, the intricate dance of awareness that has kept them safe through the long hours. When he steps inside, the warmth of the fire greets him, and the soft breathing of Astrid and Canute anchors him once more in the familiar, comforting rhythm of home. The night watch has ended, yet its effects linger, in the stillness of the village, in the quiet of the Longhouse, in the patient heartbeat of life that continues without fanfare or acclaim. Eirik leans back against the wall, letting himself absorb the satisfaction of a night well observed. Vigilance, he understands, is more than protection. It is a meditation, a bond with the unseen rhythms of the world, and a quiet affirmation of life in its simplest, most enduring form. The Longhouse lies in a deep hush, the embers of the fire glowing faintly as though unwilling to surrender their warmth entirely to the cold night. Eirik rises once more, not from restlessness but from a quiet compulsion to tend to the small enduring tasks that define life when the world is still. Survival, he knows, is not merely the conquest of enemies or the strength to row across turbulent seas. It is the accumulation of countless small skills, practiced patiently, honed in quiet hours, and carried out with careful attention to detail. He moves to the corner where bundles of cord, hooks, and sinew rest. Tonight, he chooses to repair fishing lines, meticulously threading fibers through tiny holes, knotting with precision born of years of practice. Each movement is deliberate, almost ceremonial, a rhythm established over countless nights of labor. It is quiet work, yet essential. Without such preparation, a simple task like fishing for the village's next meal could falter. There is an intimacy in this labor, a closeness to the natural world that cannot be replicated in the heat of battle or the roar of the market. Eirik pauses to examine the tools beside him. The iron hook worn smooth by repeated use, the wooden float, carved and balanced to drift effortlessly in the current, the small leather bag to hold bait, carefully stitched to endure water and time. Each object is an extension of skill, thought, and patience, carrying within it the accumulated knowledge of generations. The hands that shape, mend, and maintain are silent guardians, ensuring that life continues through winter's long nights and uncertain days. As he works, his mind drifts to the lessons taught by his elders, lessons that extend beyond technique into observation, adaptation, and foresight. They would often remind him that survival is never a single act. It is a series of small, deliberate gestures, each one preparing for the possibility of the unknown. To repair a net carefully, to carve a handle with attention to balance, to understand the wind's direction and the ice's thickness, these are acts of intelligence, patience, and respect for forces larger than oneself. The night air slips in through the cracks of the Longhouse walls, carrying the faint scent of pine and snow, of distant water and frost. It is a reminder that the world outside continues, indifferent to human concerns yet intricately connected to their actions. Eirik thinks about how easily the unprepared can falter, the fisherman who ignores the thickness of the ice, the traveler who misreads the wind, the cook who fails to store the fish properly. Survival is as much about attention and foresight as it is about strength or courage. He remembers a story told by an elder of a winter when the fjord froze unusually early. A young boy, eager to fish, ventured onto thin ice and disappeared beneath the surface. The village mourned, but they also remembered the lessons, the importance of timing, observation, and restraint. These stories are subtle warnings, whispered through memory and tradition, passed along not as fear but as guidance. They remind each listener that skill is born of patience, that knowledge protects, and that life is preserved through awareness and care. Eirik pauses, his hands holding the repaired line above the firelight. He imagines the river, now frozen and silent, soon to conceal beneath its surface the creatures that will sustain the village in days to come. Every twist of cord, every knot, every careful motion is a dialogue with that unseen world, an act of preparation, a promise that when morning comes, life will continue. He moves to the hearth, examining the embers, ensuring that the fire will persist through the coldest hours until the first light of dawn. Even the smallest gestures are part of survival: attention to warmth, to shelter, to the quiet needs of the household. Each act is deliberate, measured, and meaningful, a testament to understanding that the night is not merely to be endured but to be inhabited fully, with thought, skill, and care. Eirik's thoughts drift further into the landscape of quiet competence. He recalls observing the hunters' tracking game, their steps slow, careful, attuned to the wind and the slightest disturbances in snow or brush. He recalls the women tending crops under the weight of frost, their hands moving with precision even when fingers numbed with cold. Each skill, each gesture, is a thread in the web of survival, connecting the individual to community, to the land, and to time itself. As he lays aside his tools, Eirik feels a deep satisfaction, not in accomplishment, but in continuity. The night's work is complete for now, yet it is only a small piece of the larger cycle: tending, observing, preparing, enduring. The Vikings' true strength, he understands, lies not only in conquest or courage, but in this patient mastery of life's rhythms, the ability to act with precision when the world is quiet, to maintain connection to the land, the family, and the subtle forces that shape existence. He leans back against the wall, watching the embers flicker one last time before the night finally begins to yield to the pale promise of dawn. In the quiet, in the deliberate motion of hands and mind, Eirik discovers the essence of survival, not in grand gestures or heroic acts, but in the steady, patient attention to the details that sustain life and nurture understanding. The night carries on, deep and deliberate, as Eirik steps outside once more, drawn by the quiet pull of the world beyond the Longhouse walls. The air is sharp, carrying the scent of pine, snow, and distant water, and in it, the subtle, intricate sounds of life that move unseen beneath the blanket of darkness. Here, the world of animals comes alive in ways that are invisible during the bustle of the day, and Eirik, patient and observant, becomes part of their rhythm, learning the silent lore they offer. He pauses at the edge of the village, where the trees bend gently under frost, their branches brushing lightly against one another. A fox moves silently between shadows, its coat blending perfectly with the muted colors of the forest floor. Eirik watches without moving, recognizing the quiet intelligence in its steps, how it tests the ice, how it senses hidden dangers, how it adapts to the rhythm of night. There is a story in every motion, a lesson in every pause. The fox survives not through strength alone, but through awareness, patience, and a deep understanding of the environment. He thinks of the birds that rarely rest even in winter. Owls, perched high among branches, observe with wide, unblinking eyes, catching the slightest movement beneath them. Eirik notices the pattern of their wings, the subtle shifts as they balance, the soundless precision of their hunting. In these creatures, he sees a quiet mastery of life, an existence calibrated to the demands of the night, neither hurried nor frantic, yet perfectly aligned with survival. Eirik recalls stories passed down by elders, tales in which animals were both companions and teachers. Ravens, for instance, were said to carry messages from the gods, their black feathers reflecting wisdom and insight. Wolves were respected, feared, and admired, embodiments of endurance, strategy, and loyalty to the pack. Every creature, from the smallest mouse to the largest elk, carried a lesson hidden in behavior, movement, and presence. To watch them closely was to participate in a secret dialogue between humans and the natural world. He moves quietly toward the edge of the frozen fjord, where tracks in the snow reveal a small deer that passed earlier, its steps careful, deliberate, a pattern repeated countless times through the generations. Eirik traces the prints with a gloved hand, imagining the animal's journey, its motivations, its cautious survival. He senses the invisible rules that govern these nocturnal wanderers, the balance of hunger and caution, risk and reward, instinct and learned wisdom. And in doing so, he reflects on his own actions, the careful labor, the quiet vigilance, the patient skill that defines life in the village. The long nights have taught Eirik to see the layers of movement that most people miss. A bird landing silently, a rabbit pausing in the snow, the distant splash of a fish breaking the ice. Each is a marker, a signal, a whisper of the hidden world that thrives while humans sleep or go about daytime routines. There is a rhythm here, subtle and precise, an unspoken order in which life unfolds with elegance and efficiency. Observing it brings insight and, paradoxically, a sense of calm power. Understanding allows one to anticipate, to adapt, to survive with less struggle. Eirik reflects on the bond humans share with these creatures, even when unspoken. Wolves hunting together, foxes navigating shadows, birds guiding their flight patterns across the frozen forests. These are small acts of intelligence and cooperation that mirror human society in miniature. He considers how Vikings learn from animals, the patience of a predator, the persistence of prey, the strategy of a pack. In these lessons, he recognizes the unending exchange between observation, adaptation, and survival that sustains both humans and animals alike. He crouches to examine a small cluster of prints near the water's edge. The ice reflects faint green auroras, mingling with the stars above, and Eirik imagines the journey of a family of hares moving under moonlight, each step a negotiation with danger and opportunity. Their survival depends on awareness, subtlety, and timing, all qualities that echo in the quiet skills he has been cultivating himself. Each night, in the subtle observation of creatures that thrive in darkness, Eirik feels a silent kinship with life beyond human eyes. The wind carries distant howls, perhaps wolves communicating across the frozen landscape. Eirik listens, attentive yet unmoved by fear. In the patterns of sound, he discerns meaning, subtle messages that speak of territory, coordination, and survival. These sounds, interpreted over generations, have guided humans through winter nights as reliably as the stars overhead. Every rustle, every whisper of fur against snow, every distant call becomes a teacher, revealing strategies and truths hidden in plain sight. As he returns to the Longhouse, Eirik carries the night's observations with him, the silent lessons of foxes, deer, wolves, and birds blending seamlessly with the skills, vigilance, and hidden beliefs he has cultivated over years. Life, he realizes, is a network of interwoven lessons, and the night provides the space to understand and internalize them. The creatures of the darkness are not merely companions or obstacles. They are guides, mirrors, and teachers, each step offering insight into patience, adaptability, and the delicate balance of existence. Inside, the warmth of the fire and the slow breathing of his family greet him, grounding him in the human world once more. Yet the lessons of the night remain vivid, etched into memory like tracks in snow, guiding thought, action, and perception. Eirik knows that tomorrow, and every day after, the skills he cultivates, quiet observation, patience, attentiveness, will carry forward in every task, every decision, every subtle negotiation with the world around him. The night, rich with unseen movement and silent wisdom, has passed. And in its wake, Eirik feels the quiet assurance that life, in all its forms, continues, delicate, interconnected, and profoundly instructive. The village sleeps under the blanket of night, yet Eirik finds his mind wandering to a different kind of activity, one less visible than labor or vigilance, but just as vital, the quiet trade of knowledge. In Viking life, wisdom was currency, passed from one to another not in gold or silver, but in subtle observation, instruction, and shared experience. This trade often occurred in the night, in hushed voices by the fire, in the careful guidance of hands over tools, and in the patient storytelling that shaped both understanding and identity. Eirik sits once more beside the fading embers, the small figure he carved earlier resting on the windowsill. He reflects on the elders who taught him to read the sky, to predict the movement of storms, to interpret patterns in the snow or the behavior of animals. These lessons were never formalized. They were passed down in moments of attention, repetition, and subtle demonstration. A warning about the ice here, a hint about the wind there. Each fragment of knowledge is a thread, woven into a tapestry of survival that spans generations. The night encourages this quiet transmission. The Longhouse's warmth is forgiving, the world outside distant, and the rhythm of the fire provides the gentle cadence necessary for contemplation. Eirik remembers sitting at his father's knee, hands mimicking those of an elder, learning not just how to carve a handle or mend a line, but why a particular method mattered, how slight differences could spell success or failure, life or misfortune. Every gesture carried intention. Every lesson was a story embedded in action. Even in the absence of direct teaching, knowledge circulates in the subtleties of shared space. He notices how the position of tools, the organization of furs, the careful placement of kindling on the hearth, all small choices, communicate understanding to those who observe closely. It is a language without words, a constant negotiation between attention, experience, and intuition. The night amplifies these nuances, highlighting subtleties that the day might obscure with noise and activity. Eirik reflects on the social structures that support this exchange. Younger villagers learn from older ones not just by imitation, but through engagement in practical tasks, repairing, crafting, hunting, observing, always with the possibility of quiet correction, gentle instruction, or subtle suggestion. Knowledge is never forced. It is offered, noticed, absorbed, and refined. In this way, the village preserves its collective memory and skill, ensuring continuity in the face of winters, storms, and unforeseen challenges. He thinks of trade beyond the village, the networks of information and goods that stretch across fjords and mountains. Each trader carries not just wares, but the accumulated knowledge of distant lands, weather patterns, fishing grounds, political arrangements, even rumors that might hint at danger or opportunity. The night often serves as a moment of reflection after such exchanges, as travelers rest, merchants count and organize, and local observers integrate these new fragments of understanding into the existing fabric of life. Eirik allows his mind to drift to storytelling itself, the most enduring form of knowledge transfer. The skalds, whose tales intertwine myth, history, and observation, teach lessons that are rarely explicit but deeply felt. A story of a clever fox, a failed raid, or a cautious traveler carries embedded wisdom, how to act, what to avoid, and what to honor. These tales live not on paper but in memory, repeated, adapted, and internalized through attention and reflection. Night is their ideal canvas, offering the silence necessary to hear the subtleties, to recognize the patterns, to understand what is implied as much as what is spoken. The quiet trade of knowledge extends even to the rhythms of daily life. Observing when the fire needs feeding, when the snow is thick enough to support steps, when the wind signals a shift in weather, all are insights that once noticed, are silently passed along through example and routine. Eirik sees that this subtle exchange underpins survival as much as any physical skill or tool. It is an invisible scaffolding, holding the community together through awareness, attentiveness, and shared understanding. As he leans back against the wall, letting the warmth of the fire seep into him, Eirik feels the weight and importance of these intangible transactions. Knowledge, quiet and patient, is a form of protection, a thread connecting past, present, and future. It moves through touch, observation, repetition, and story. It is neither fast nor flashy, but it is persistent, enduring, and essential, the hidden current that ensures life continues beyond the immediate and visible, beneath the calm surface of daily existence. He exhales slowly, recognizing that the night, with all its stillness, offers the perfect environment for such reflection and transmission. Every lesson, every observation, every story carried through hours of quiet attention, strengthens both the individual and the community. In this gentle rhythm, Eirik perceives a truth as enduring as the fjord, as vital as the hearth, and as patient as the northern wind. Survival and wisdom are inseparable, and their trade is as quiet as it is indispensable.